Is the Necron Codex as bad as the internet says it is? Hey guys, welcome back to this episode of Dice Club, where we're going to dive deeper into the Necron Codex. However, before we do that, let me pay some bills. I'd like to ask everybody to hit that like, subscribe, notification button. It really does help the channel grow, and I'd like to thank everybody who's done so already. Also, you'll see, and you watch them in all my bat reps if you guys have been watching them, we do have we do give away to our members. We do have a membership, I guess it would be called a membership. I don't know what it is. It's in the link described in the description below, and go in to click that link, learn about the membership. We have it's a $1, $5, $10, and we do give away things to our members. For example, these billboards, they are custom. I do draw a member out of a hat. They get to, I'll make them up a billboard. Greg Gonzalez was this month's winner. At the end of this month in January, if Greg wants it, this is yours. You now own it. If you don't want it, I'll keep it on the channel, and every once in a while I'll break it back out for members only games, for members only games or member games where you guys get to be featured again. With that being said, we pay some bills. Let's get into it. My guest today is my buddy Nick. He is a Necrons player. We have to hold it up for me. Got the new Necrons Codex here. This would be the first actual, Nick. So this is new to me as well. This is actually the first time I've actually had a new Codex on the Dice Club video. I mean, we've done it. We've done those before, but not an actual sit down and talk about a new Codex.
Yeah.
Okay. And what the nice thing about, and I'm gonna kind of like give some perspective on you, is Nick is not a way back player.
No. I started collecting a bit in 9th edition. Really was interested in the Necrons and all of that, but I thought the rules at the time were way too confusing, so I sort of was off on the wayside until 10th edition when I decided to jump in.
Which, and guys, that's actually the reason why I wanted to bring that up and make that important, because GW, their point of 10th edition was to make the rules easier for people who are new to the game to be able to come in and play the game and just pick it up real easily. And you felt you've done that.
Yeah. It took me a couple of games to really get the flow of things down, but right. I feel like it's very straightforward, and it more leans on what your individual army can do rather than trying to memorize everything else.
Exactly. And Nick's played some tournaments. We met at our local events. So Nick is a good player as far as being a new guy. And I think you play like a veteran, so I think that's a testament to you.
Thank you.
Matter of fact, didn't you come in like second or something? In
one of the tournaments. Yeah, I got lucky, I think. But.
Yeah, I mean, luck, skill. I mean, we do play a dice game, so sometimes dice.
It's a little of both.
But you got to put yourself in position to have good dice. So that's awesome. We're not going to get into lore because one, I'm not a Necrons lore guy. So I don't know a lot about the lore. Very, very surface level lore. Not a lore guy.
I know a bit of the lore. At the end of it, they're killer robots from outer space that took a long nap and they're back and ready to take over.
Exactly.
That's pretty much all I need to know to get into it.
Exactly. So we're just going to jump into the Codex. So let's talk about detachments. So they got some detachments. How many detachments are there?
There are 5 detachments in the Codex, I believe, unless I'm counting wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. The first one is the Awakened Dynasty Codex, which everyone will remember from the Index. The enhancements all remain the same. We gave them, or I should say GW gave them some new names to freshen it up, but really the play style is much of the same. You're going to get +1 on your hit rolls for any unit that has a character. Really more or less stayed the same from the Index. With a lot of the changes to the models, I'm not sure if it's as competitively viable after the Codex, but I still think there is a lot of play, and it's very good, I think, for new Necron players. I think it was an excellent choice for the Index detachment because it was super simple to understand as a new player and really allowed me to jump in it and get started.
Right. As far as I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's all right.
As far as the strats, because I'm looking at the strat page now.
Yep.
As far as the strats, same as the Index, not the same as the Index?
Everything, as far as I've read, is the exact same as the Index stratagem-wise here. The two big ones for this detachment are going to be the Undying Legions, of course. That was what was bringing back our Lich Guard over and over and over and over again during the Index phase, as well as Sudden Storm was one I liked a lot too, because you were essentially giving assault to any unit you wanted that had a character leading it.
Gotcha.
And so that was very helpful, especially with the warriors.
You mentioned Lich Guard. We're going to get more into they change a little bit. So
lots of changes.
Yeah, we'll get into some of the changes later on. What about the next one?
Yeah, the second one listed in the book here is Annihilation Legion, which really focuses on like the destroyer cults. So your Scorpek destroyers, big melee dudes, the Locust destroyers, big shooter dudes, and the Flayed ones, which do some infiltrate shenanigans. I'm not as familiar with this one. I haven't played this one yet, but I think there is a good amount of capability here. My only drawback personally is that there aren't a lot of models that benefit from the rule.
I gotcha.
So like in Awakened Dynasty or in Canoptic Court, as long as you've got the right character, you can give it to just about anything.
I gotcha.
But the Annihilation Legion, you really only got 3 or 4 units that are going to benefit.
And what are those units, just roughly?
The ones I mentioned. So the Scorpek destroyers,
Gotcha.
Locust destroyers, Locust heavy destroyers, and Flayed ones. And I'm pretty sure that's it.
So if you leaned into that in 9th edition, I know you didn't play 9th edition.
Yeah.
But if you lead into that 9th edition and you have those models, you have the capability. It's like Space Marines. Okay, there's so many options.
Yeah, it definitely allows for the Annihilation Legion allows for a focus on those units that definitely isn't present elsewhere. So it definitely allows for that different type of play style. Big deal for them is that anytime you declare a charge with those units, you can re-roll your charge, which is very helpful on those long bomb 9-inch charges. If your target is below half strength, you also get to add 1 to that charge roll.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, pretty good.
Any special let's put it this way, any strats that jump out at you?
There isn't anything crazy here from what I can see. I haven't looked that much into it. One big thing I think is Insanity's Ire. After your unit has been shot at, and say like, you target my Scorpek destroyers and you kill one, the idea is that they go crazy, and then you can make a normal move, but you have to end as close as possible to that enemy unit.
Gotcha.
So in the sense that if your enemy was trying to shoot you but not charge you, you can get right up in their face and force them to deal with it, which I think is a good play.
Yeah, it is a good. So guys, this is also, the Codex only been out for 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
Maybe less than 2. Well, it'll be 2 weeks today.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, again, these are, if you guys have combinations that you've played over the last 2 weeks, leave them in the comments, not combination, but anything, any kind of thing as we're going through this and we're talking about it. I would love to get your feedback on it, because we do read this stuff at the end in the comics, on the comments. So anything that you feel or can add to the conversation in a positive way, please feel free to do so.
Absolutely. There's a lot of stuff I'm sure I'm missing. The next one is the one we saw today in the battle report, the Canoptic Court.
All right, so we're not going to ruin the battle report in case this comes out first.
Yeah.
But me and Nick did bat rep this. And so let's talk about this one after. Let's make this one last.
Sure.
Because this is the one that you like the most.
Is the one that I'm certainly the most prepared to play. Yeah.
Okay, let's skip this one for now.
Sure. Going on, the next one is, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I'll go for it. Obeisance Phalanx. Sure. Why not? Right. This one focuses a lot more on your. I guess the lore behind it is that this is more of like the bodyguard of the king himself.
Gotcha.
So you're really surrounding yourself with overlords, lich guards, triarch praetorians can see some play. This is another one I haven't looked too far in. What is interesting is that it seems like the detachment centers around the Silent King, but he notably doesn't have the triarch keyword in the Codex.
Right.
I'm not sure if that was intended. It could have some positives or some drawbacks depending on how you look at it.
Right.
But the big deal for them is that anytime your Overlord, Lichguard, or Triarch units make an attack, they get +1 to wound, which can be huge, especially with the Lichguard punching up into tougher targets.
Right. So I'm going to touch on something you said, and you talked about it off camera right before we hit record on this, whether or not the Silent King is missing the keyword, whether or not it was a mistake, but whether or not it was intentional.
Right.
Right. That's something that you belong in a lot of the Necron, or you listen to a lot of Necron stuff on the interwebs.
Yeah.
And interwebs sometimes are not the most positive of things.
Yeah, a lot of times, people get caught up in circles of conversation, and then you end up going down a spiral, right?
Right.
And I would make the positive assumption here that GW intended for the Silent King to be a standout model in the sense that he is one in his own and perhaps doesn't need these benefits in order to remain balanced.
And the fact that and I'm going to actually take it. I agree with you on that, and I'm going to take it to one thing further is that if the Silent King has that ability, then maybe he's broken.
Right.
So in the case that, and I know people want to get on the GW about stuff like this because they feel that a rule should be changed, or they feel something should have a rule, and even if it doesn't, I think sometimes it's intentional because whether or not it was played that way or presented that way, the Silent King could be just broken if he gets the keyword.
Right.
I don't know. I'm always gonna be positive about it. I'm always gonna give the benefit of the doubt because I don't make the rules. I'm not sitting in the room.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It definitely I think depends on the perspective or the lens that you approach it with.
Right.
If you approach it with a completely negative standpoint and make the assumption that everything is as worse as it possibly can be, then of course you're going to come to that conclusion. But other times it could just be that, like we talked about, it's intentional for balance reasons, or it's just a typo that that a writer like myself unfortunately left out.
Right. So guys, I wanted to touch on that because there is chatter about it. I felt that it needed to be addressed a little bit. So we address it with the fact that we're going to take it as the GW intentionally did it, and if they didn't, then everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah, well, we'll hear about it in the next balanced data slate, right?
We'll hear about it in January.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yep.
Next one, sir.
Yep. Next one here.
Or is there? Let's go to strats.
Yeah, a couple of strats here. A pretty big one, I think, is our territorial obsession. If it really focuses on the vehicles, so that's good. If you've got some Doom Stalkers or the Triarch Stalkers, I think would be a good one for this. You add up to, if it's not a vehicle, you get +1 OC, but if it is a vehicle, you get +3 OC.
What's the Silent King?
The Silent King is, I'm not sure if he carries the vehicle one.
Does he?
Oh, he does actually. So there's one benefit that he can gain from with that vehicle tag is to get an instant +3 OC.
What's his OC now?
Normally it's 6 for him and then +1 for his buddies on the barge. Okay. So it goes from 8 to 11. So if you're facing against someone tough like Knights and you just need that couple extra OC to get those points, that's a good way to do it.
What's him individually? What's his OC?
Him by himself is 6.
6 and then plus the 9 of the strat?
It'd be 6 + 2 from each one of his bodyguards in the model, and then +3 from the strat. So
it's 6 + 2, 10 + 3. So 13?
It'd be 11.
11?
Yeah.
Well, hold on. You said it was 6.
Yeah, so 6, and then he has 2 Triarchal Menhirs, if that's how it's pronounced, so 6, 7, 8, and then 3 from the strat, so 9, 10, 11.
Oh, it's only 2, one each.
Yeah.
1 each. Okay, I added. That's what I added up. I thought it was 2 each.
It's all good. But yeah, so I mean, even though he doesn't carry that Triarch tag, he does still carry some other tags that do have play in the detachment.
Right. And we have, and to be honest, just to be transparent, we didn't break down whether or not the keyword would give him benefits or not if he had it, or vice versa. Right. So we're just talking about just in general.
Yeah, there's a lot of math that can be done there, but I think as far as the intent goes, that there's still a lot of viability even as it's currently written.
Absolutely. What's the next one, sir?
The next one I think is going to be a big one that we're going to see in a lot of tournaments. It's Hypercrypt Legion. So a lot of the internet's response to this is like, so Necrons have become Grey Knights. But I think in some ways, I don't know much about Grey Knights, but I think it really
a lot of movement.
Lot of movement. Yeah. So just to jump into it, depending on the size of the battle, you're going to get 2 to 4 units that you can pull off of the board at the end of your opponent's turn, assuming they're not locked in melee. A typical 2,000 point game, you're going to be able to pull up 3 units at the end of your opponent's every turn, and there's an enhancement that gives you 1 more.
That's great. Yeah, that's exactly a great idea.
It's going to be huge for players that roll a lot with monoliths. Monoliths are going to be huge. I'll get to that in a second. But also the Satan or Catan or however you pronounce it.
Right.
Those big heavy hitters that can, especially the Transcendent, that can deep strike in and get right in your enemy's face. It's going to be very. I think it fits in a lot with like the whole implaceable nature of the Necrons, dipping a little bit into the lore. The idea that you can't really put them in one spot. And that really, I think, is a huge enhancement versus the Index play style.
Yeah, real quick before we get into strats with this, I want to touch on reanimation protocols.
Yeah.
So before we finish this up, how do reanimation protocols work? Is it inherent throughout Necrons, or is it based on the detachment?
It's inherent to the entire army.
Okay, so it is their army rule.
Yep.
And it's D6 or D3 every.
Yeah, so in the Index, there were a couple of values that you had to remember. The Warriors got D6, everyone else got D3. You had stratagems that would give a little extra. Now, after the Codex, unless you're in that Awakened Dynasty pulling that one strat that we talked about, it's going to be D3 all the time.
All the time.
All the time. There is in Canoptic Court, or which is it? No, not the Canoptic Court. The Overlords now, they're orbs. That had a big change that we'll talk about in a second.
Right.
But that is the only D6 you're going to see now for reanimation.
So real quick, because we're not going to get into the playstyle on this. However, we're not going to get in because we're going to talk about the one you played.
Yeah.
But I want to touch on this real quick because this Hyper Crypt Legion, the fact that you can move around. So guys, if you think, let's take a pause from going this for a minute, because I want to bring reanimation up, because reanimation as a whole is still good.
Yeah.
You're getting D3 wounds back, which in some cases you're bringing models back. You have a reanimator, which gives you another D3.
Yeah.
And you have, if you're on objectives, you get certain things. You got a lot of ways to, spiders bringing back scarabs. You got a lot of ways to bring back models, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I still think our durability is quite good with the Codex.
Yeah, so with that being said, the fact that at the end of my turn with the Hyper Crypt Legion, you can pick up 3 units, come back down anywhere on the board.
Yep, you can
within 9 inches away.
Yeah, and you can reanimate while they're in reserves too. A lot of people thought that wasn't going to be the case, but currently, as written, you can. So if your units are almost dead, they got annihilated in the shooting phase, you pop them out, get your reanimation done, and bring them back in when you're ready. Because you don't with the Hyper Crypt, with the hyper phasing, you don't follow the normal rules for strategic reserves. So if I pull it round 1, I can wait until round 5 and then pop them back in and surprise you when they're back at full health.
So wait, let's go back to that. So how does you can reanimate off the table? Yeah. How is that? What allows you to do that? Just the reanimation protocol?
It's the reanimation protocol, and it's.
Guys, we got interrupted. I had to cut it off for a minute, but we're going to jump back into the Hyper Crypt Legion. So we're talking about being lifted up off the battlefield. I think that's where we cut off, and being able to reanimate with a strat. Actually, it's a strat.
Yep. So that is a big benefit, I think, here for Hyper Crypt Legion. 2 stratagems that will affect a lot. Right. One being for 1 CP, you can reanimate all of your units that are in reserves. So with that enhancement, if you've pulled 4 units off the board and have them in that for 1 CP, which if you've got Imitech, you're getting 2 anyway.
Right.
You're going to get all of those reanimations in addition to what's already on the battlefield.
Right. And what's nice about that too, the ability to move stuff around, is you, even after you spend that strat, which you're doing once every time. Right. I mean, it's like it happen all the time. But even if you don't want to, you can just hide these guys, reanimate in command phase.
Right.
And I mean, it's such a good thing, because like you said, you have that one. What is it? Who is the character that gives you an extra CP?
Imitech the Stormlord.
All right, Imitech the Stormlord, which is the new model. Right?
Yes,
the new model, and everybody bashed that model, right? that he actually gives you 1 CP per game, not the model itself, but the
data sheet.
The data sheet. I mean, he gives you 1 CP per game, which now with this allows you to reanimate off the board. Dude, that's pretty insane.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. I mean, there's definitely play for it, which is good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think another big one for this one is going to be the dimensional corridor stratagem. So if you normally, you're using the monolith, I can bring the monolith up the board and then use its ability to place my models within 6 inches of it, no matter where they are. Okay. So they just teleport there. The big drawback, though, is that you can't normally charge afterwards.
Right.
So you could do it with your warriors and shoot stuff, but if you did it with your Lich Guard or something else, you just had to stand there and wait.
Right.
For 2 CP now, you can give them that charge back. So if you could start off with some Lich Guard hiding in the back, just doing nothing, babysitting the home objective, and then bam, they're right in your face. And you can put them within 3 inches using that stratagem.
What's the monolith?
The monolith?
No, how many points?
350, 375, I think.
Interesting.
And he's got pretty strong anti-tank too. A lot of people have considered bringing 2 of them for that exact reason.
Right.
Because with the hyper phasing, you can bring them out. They can always deep strike. So you could just be popping your monoliths around everywhere on the table, bringing your Lich Guard and your warriors along for the ride. I think that's going to be a big one for competition because you won't be able to know where your enemy Necron player is planning to put their stuff.
And you're really going to have to learn how to. You're really going to have to really screen effectively, even though they can come down. Within a little bit.
It's pretty easy to screen the monolith. He's like 6 inches wide on each side, but if you're not careful, they'll be right in your face.
Yeah, and so this is. I think you're right. We're going to see this in a lot of. And again, we don't really get into competitive on this channel, but I think you're going to see a lot of the gameplay with this Hypercrypt Legion. I think you're going to see a lot of it because of the movement mechanic. And real quick, I'm just to kind of wrap this one up, and I think the playstyle, just real quick, the playstyle for this, just listening to me and you are talking, this is my knee-jerk reaction, is you're playing the mission very well.
Mm-hmm.
You're not. I mean, you don't even worry about killing things.
Right.
You're literally just jumping all over the board wherever your tactics card makes you go. I mean, it's actually pretty good. It's pretty solid. I like it. Let's go to the next one. Again, Necrons my second least. Well, Tal and Necrons are right up there with my least favorite.
Well, last but not least is what I played today, the Canoptic Court. This one is my favorite so far in the Codex. One that I think we're going to see possibly the most play based on my initial reactions. This one has a big impact on, I think, play style and essentially what you're bringing to the table versus what you were bringing during the Index.
Okay.
The detachment rule here is the Power Matrix. It operates similarly, I believe, to the Chaos Demons rule, to where you start off with your deployment zone is always within this matrix.
Right.
No Man's Land becomes within the matrix if you control half or more of the objectives, and then you can put it in your opponents too if you manage to capture that objective. But essentially, as long as you're or I should say, all the time, if you have a Cryptek in your unit or a Canoptic model, they're going to reroll hits of 1. However, if you're wholly within that power matrix, you get to reroll all hits, and that empowers units very well. And as we saw, it can turn units that you may not have considered before due to their points or their previous killiness. It makes them a lot more viable and a lot more powerful.
Right. Well, yeah, and just based on what our game was, I'm not going to ruin anything as far as what we did, but the rerolls are pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I spent up until the Codex came out. Every time I faced against Space Marines, I was sitting there watching them reroll all those dice, being like, "Man, I wish I could do that."
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Now you can.
Now it can, and to I think great effect.
Yeah, it's really it works just like you said. It works just like the I believe it's called the Chaos Warps. I can't remember.
I can't remember what it's called either.
Works just like the Chaos Demons. When you control the zone, you control 2 objectives in No Man's Land. The matrix is yours. You're within that matrix, and you got to be wholly within.
Wholly within.
And the deployment zone always counts.
Yep.
That's wholly within. It's actually really good. It does get around a lot of. Things as far as the rerolls go, and it's pretty solid.
Yeah, with a lot of our stuff hitting on 4s or even 5s, I think it's really important, especially as we saw with the death card. You're constantly getting your weapon skills and your hit roll is reduced. Exactly. Those rerolls give you twice as many chances.
Yeah. So this, you're absolutely right, and this is not giving anything away, but the fact that I was Cloud of Fliesing, or even when you were within my contagion range, the initial roll may not have been really good, but the reroll was pretty consistent. I mean, it was pretty good.
It helps, right? Yeah. I know we didn't talk about enhancements a lot in a lot of the other detachments, but one I want to point out here is Dimensional Sanctum. That's going to give any of your Cryptek units infiltrate. I think a big one for that is going to be the Wraiths with the Technomancer. That's a big tough, kill a unit right in your opponent's face. I think another unit that could see a lot of play with it, I considered doing it today, is the Warriors. If you can imagine having a 20-plus man unit of Warriors infiltrate,
Right.
you could take up the entire width of the board with that,
Yeah,
or at least
yeah.
half of it. A big stratagem for this one that I used a couple times is Cynosure, maybe, of Eradication. It's 2 CP, but it's a battle tactic. So that my Overlord with the Translocation Shroud, once per battle round, gets to do it for free and give his unit devastating wounds, which on the
good.
Immortals is huge.
Yeah, which is really good.
Yeah.
It came in very handy in our bat rep.
Yes, definitely. And with that ability too, you can chain it. Like I tried to do it with one of my units. It didn't quite work out, but there's a lot of potential there.
So, guys, I'm going to tell you real quick. We're talking about this. And so Dark Angels, I believe, I think it's Dark Angels. You Dark Angel fans, correct me if I'm wrong, where they save on mortal wounds. They have some kind of enhancement. It's like some kind of attachment that lets them save on mortal wounds. I think it's like a 4-up or 5-up on mortal wounds. And everybody's complaining like, oh, that wasn't a good thing. But so far, these codexes that have come out, there's a lot more mortal wounds in these codexes than there was in indexes.
I think so too.
So
yeah,
it's just an interesting, just an interesting, I think, just observation. I couldn't think of the word. Just an interesting observation. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Another, really the only other stratagem that I think could make a big deal.
Devastating. I'm sorry. It's devastating wounds, not mortal wounds. Against
devastating wounds.
So the feel no pains are actually, without not mortal wounds. I actually have to correct my words. The devastating. They have feel no pains on devastating or mortal wounds. Mm-hmm. So I think we're seeing a little bit more of that as the Codex comes out. And I think Dark Angels. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Like I was saying, I think Dark Angels has a somehow detachment or something that allows them to reroll. I can't remember what it is, but go ahead.
Yeah, a couple other big stratagems I see here. One is the reactive subroutines for your Canoptic models. I think that's going to be big on the Wraiths and like the Sentinel and the Stalker. If after your opponent moves, if they're trying to get up in your face or if they're trying to get around you, it gives you the ability to move up to 6 inches. So if your enemy's trying to like flank you, you can just stand right in front and say no, or get away if you feel threatened.
And we're seeing that. We actually are seeing that in all the codexes. We're seeing that in the NIDS codex, and we're seeing that in the Space Marines codex. So that's actually something that looks like, basically, it's like that. It's like Fire and Fade that used to be in Eldar. We're actually seeing that in different units all across the scope of the last 3 codexes. Yeah,
and I think that helps a lot. A, with balance, and B, with understanding your opponent better. Right. Because if especially as a new player, if I'm facing a new army and I can at least look at your ability and say, oh, I have something similar, I'm going to be able to remember it a lot better.
Exactly.
And even if it's not quite as special and unique.
Right.
The last stratagem I'll mention here is a suboptimal facade. It's, again, for your Canoptic units, so your Wraiths and your Stalkers and whatnot. If they're getting charged, you can just reanimate right there on the spot. So if you feel like you're, especially if you're like below half strength, or you feel like you might get killed, or if you only have 1 unit left or 1 wound left, exactly. You can get that reanimation right on the spot and hopefully get a few more wounds.
Yeah, reanimation is pretty. I mean, it's still a really strong mechanic.
I think, it helps us out a lot, and I think the Codex, I think, really balances that out a lot. Yeah.
So that was the last one, right?
Yep.
The last detachment. So let's stay on Canoptic Court, because that's the one that you played, and that's the one that we showed off in the bat rep. So play style for that, I think, pretty solid. What do you think? What's your play style? Again, I know you only played essentially the one, but you've looked through the Codex. You had to decide on this one,
right?
So out of all the 4 or 5 that they are, you had to decide on this one. Why did it fit your play style? What do you think the play style is for this?
Two things that really drew me to this is, A, I amassed myself quite a swarm of bugs, and in the index they didn't really have much use. Right? The scarabs were nice for blocking something, or maybe you get a lucky explosion on one and kill something, but they just immediately died. You had no hope for doing anything with them.
Right.
Now I think they have a lot more viability. The Tomb Sentinels and the Stalkers, the Forge Ward models. We saw a bit of play of that in the Index. They're still pretty useful, but now with those rerolls, they're huge.
Yep, they're pretty big.
And I think as far as playstyle goes, it really diverges from how we were being, or at least how I felt we were being forced to play with the Index. With the Index, you had your 2 or 3 super expensive, super durable, impossible to kill Lich Guard, right? You put 2 or 3 of them on the board, you walk up to your objective, and you stay still and you hope you don't die.
Exactly.
Right? You had no purpose, no use trying to kill anything. You were just there not to die.
Right.
And in my games, at least, especially at the tournament level, all of those games were decided by turn 2 or 3. Either the Lich Guard were dead or everything else was dead, and the game was decided.
Right.
Now, I think, especially in this Canoptic Court, there's so much more going on and so much more viability and movement, especially with some of these new data sheets, that it's a lot more fun personally. It's a lot more engaging, and you're doing a lot more.
Right.
You're not just sitting there waiting for your opponent to lose the attrition battle. You're actually getting in and using more strategy and thinking about your stratagems a lot more.
And guys, this could just be me and what I watch or what I pay attention to, but I didn't see in the indexes. And again, you got to understand that indexes were just a starting point, right? It wasn't like
they're placeholders, really.
Yeah, they're placeholders. It wasn't like this was going to be a thing. But jumping from indexes to codexes, we didn't see a lot of scarabs in the index play. Okay, we're going to go back to the index play, right?
Yeah.
Because 9th edition, we saw scarabs like crazy. I think now with the codex, because scarabs are such a part of Necrons, and 8th and 9th edition, at least that's where I can go. That's where I go back. Scarabs are such a part of it that when the index came, the scarabs kind of weren't. I mean, like you said, Lich Guard was so expensive, there wasn't a place for scarabs.
Right.
You know, again, and this is just what I've noticed. I'm not saying if you're a Necron player and you play scarabs all the time, dude, I get it. That's not. But in our groups and what I'm seeing when I'm traveling around, at least in our area, and looking on BCP and stuff, I didn't see a lot of lists with scarabs in it. But again, we were in indexes, which is only a quarter of what we're finding, which is only a quarter of the index.
Right.
Now I think we're going to see, like you said, especially with this Canoptic Court, I think we're going to see the reemergence of scarabs.
Yeah.
Do they, and I got to ask you, do they fall under the hyper, what was it?
The Hypercrypt?
The Hypercrypt?
The Hypercrypt is for any unit that's not in melee.
Okay, so we're going to see now with that, we're going to see, again, scarabs just bouncing around the table.
Right.
Because and what can I take them at?
You can take them in units of up to 6. Okay. 3 of them is 40 points.
So they shorten it. They made that smaller. So you can only take 6. So they used to be able to take. All right. So 9th edition. I know you didn't play 9th edition. 9th edition, you can take a lot of them. In 8th edition or 10th edition, now you can only take 6.
You could take with the rule of 3. You could take up to 18.
In one unit.
One unit, it's only 6.
Yeah, in one unit. So you could bring like 10.
Oh really?
Yeah. It was a ridiculous mud pit. Like. You thought that our mud pit in the beginning of the game with the race and Terminators this was like silly mud pit. Like and then it brings them back, and then you reanimate, and the spider brings them back. And it doesn't matter how good your melee was, trying to chew through them was literally dumb.
Yeah. So, I think 6 is a good number for them.
It's a really good number.
Yeah. It gives you, even 3 is good if you're just trying to pop them around the board in your secondaries. Yep. But if you're trying to use them like I was and give them like a good screen and some good melee support, some good OC support, I think 6 is a good number there.
So in our game, and this is not going to ruin anything, in our game, you did go around some drones, which isn't necessarily the best target, but it was the target that you had.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the drone was able to obviously get out of combat. But when you go, if you get them around something else that can't fly,
right,
and you surround them with your 6 scarabs, now I got a desperate breakout and cause more wounds. And they kicked off, they roll 4 attacks each, 5 attacks each.
6 attacks apiece.
6 attacks. So you're at 36 attacks.
36 attacks, full ray rolls. A lot of times you're hitting on 6s anyways, so you're just fishing for those lethal hits.
Right. And they're lethal. And they're lethal. So, and really all they do is just to literally be a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I mean, at 80 points for 6 models, you can't do much better.
No, you can. And they play the mission very well. They can move what's the movement? 6-7 inches?
Their movement is 10 inches
10
now.
inches? Okay,
yeah.
So 10 inches. and then you can pick them up and move them around depending on what
detachment you're in. Yep.
But in your detachment, they worked actually beautifully. I think they were able to tie things up, and I think that's going to be their job.
Yeah, I think Scarabs and Wraiths certainly are going to be auto-include, especially if you're going to be playing this detachment.
Yeah, Wraiths for sure, because
Wraiths are going to be auto-include all the time, I think. You're going to see a lot of lists, if you play competitively, you're going to see a lot of lists with 18 Wraiths and 20 or 30 Immortals, maybe a couple Satans.
Yeah. And for those of you who are looking for Wraiths, there are none.
Yeah, you can buy mine. They're $300 a piece on eBay.
Yeah, Wraiths. That's to show you. That's to show you what people are first knee-jerk reaction to.
Yeah.
When you start to see stores are out of them,
I think
GW's website's out of them.
Yep.
And then you're starting to see them creep up in price.
Yep.
On eBay.
Yep. I saw a dude on eBay he was looking for $50 per model. And he had like a table of 30 of them. I'm like, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah.
But people pay it, so I guess it works.
Yeah, guys, and this is a side note. I do think eBay has its place. I really do. I think that you can buy secondhand models on eBay, which is great. And I've always said that was a good thing. I've always have. But don't get into
meta chasing.
Don't get into meta chasing, spending $50 a pop on one model, where you're spending $150 on 3 models. You know what I mean? Like $300 on it's good now.
Yeah.
Because there's only 3 codexes out.
Right.
There's literally 3 codexes
well, we saw that already with Lich Guard and Crypto Thralls in the index. We saw Crypto Thralls going for $80, $90 a pair on eBay. Right. And now they've been nerfed to hell, and
exactly
where does that money go? Right? You could have bought more race with that money.
Exactly. So stay patient. All I'm just telling you guys, and get the rule cool. You know how I feel about that. Don't chase the meta. It's literally a witch hunt, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got 18 Wraiths, 3 Tomb Sentinels, 3 Kanaka Doomstalkers, 30 Immortals, you might be prepared for success a little bit better,
right?
But you can still lose just as easily.
And we got 3 codexes.
Yeah,
we got 3. Right. So the rest of them could come out and just wipe race off the board, and then you got to shift your whole thing, and you just spend $600 from this dude,
right,
on 1 unit of Wraiths.
Yeah.
So now if money is no object to you, then be a member. No, I'm just kidding.
Buy me more Wraiths.
Yeah, exactly. If money's no object, then go ahead spend $50 on them. But yeah, just don't chase. I'm not a meta chaser. I've never been a meta chaser.
No, it's not. I don't think it's rewarding, unless of course you've got the money to burn.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think that is where a lot of the negativity comes from with our departure from the index.
Right.
Is that a lot of people, especially newer players getting into 10th, they see the Lich Guard bricks, they see them doing very well. They spend $240 on 20 Lich Guard at retail price, and then now the Lich Guard aren't as strong. They're not as durable, and they feel, or they could possibly feel slighted or offended by that point that they spent all this money. When really, if like you said, if you're patient, Lich Guard will be good again.
Exactly.
Just hold on to
Just
them.
give it a point.
Yeah.
And actually, you make a really good point. They get jaded.
Mm-hmm.
They get jaded, and then they get mad at GW. Mm-hmm. Like it's GW's fault that they just spent a whole bunch of money to chase the meta.
Right.
It's not
the Wraiths are still the same retail price, even though they're much better now.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. So, guys, you know how I am on this channel. I do stay positive, and I don't bash GW at all because I enjoy the game. I enjoy the product that they make. I'm always thrilled with all the rules, but for the most part, 99% of the time, I think they do a great job.
Right, the rule of getting better, right?
Yeah,
we can always improve, but we got to be happy with where we're at.
Exactly, and what I don't like to hear from anybody, whoever it's from, is that they get mad at GW, a company, for making rules, and then they went out and spent a bunch of money on models that were, like you said, like Lich Guard, and they're spending all this money on them, and then all of a sudden the new Codex comes out, and at the time, right now, they're not as good as they were when they were in the indexes.
Right.
But it's not GW's fault you went out and spent all this money to play Lich Guards for 3 months, having them be solid, and now they're not.
Right.
You know,
if you
it's
rely
not GW's fault for that. You know what I mean?
You rely too much on your one-trick pony, and then you feel offended. Yeah.
And then I think that, and eventually, guys, again, you got more codex that are going to come out throughout the next couple of years, and what we're talking about is, like I said, not to repeat it, Wraiths are good now based on the index play that we're all dealing with,
Right.
and you guys have the 3 code. But when everything else comes out, all of a sudden that meta might shift, or GW does a balanced data sheet,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden Lich-Guard, which were not playable. Not saying they're not playable, but right now, no, they're not.
They're less durable.
They're less
certainly.
durable. All of a sudden, we see less Lich-Guard play, and all of a sudden they bounce up.
Right.
You know, because GW decides to drop a data slate on them.
Right. Yeah. Don't go out and buy 18 Wraiths, because if you do that, guaranteed GW is going to raise their points with the next data slate.
Yeah, because we don't know, because we literally have a data sheet coming next month.
Yeah.
So we don't know what's broken, what's not broken. I don't necessarily know if they're going to be hit because there's a new Codex. We only have 30. We're only going to have about 30 days, maybe 30 days of play.
Yeah.
So, all right. So without all that being, we talked a little bit about that play style. Let's jump into that. We were discussing that a little bit.
Yeah.
So what do you think the best play style for the Canoptic Court is?
I think the best play style, if we're speaking strictly on like meta terms, the best play style is to get a couple, 1 or 2, maybe 3 units of Wraiths. Really use them to tie up your enemies, more tougher targets like Terminators or something similar. Use them to screen a bit. Use that Dimensional Sanctum strategy to get your first point during infiltration. I even recommend some more infiltration if you can fit it, just to get that matrix going from turn 1. Immortals are huge. I think with the eradication stratagem, giving them the dead wounds, those dead wounds clean up really nice.
Yep.
I think you're going to see immortals in all of the detachments, but they are the Tesla immortals with I think the Plasmancer and the new Overlord are definitely auto-include for Canoptic Court.
And actually, that's a good combination. So we're just going to include that in the combination. That's a really good combination right now.
Yeah.
And it does kick out a lot of dev wounds.
It does. It does. I can't remember the math of it, but assuming you roll well, you're doing 10 plus dev wounds every time.
And it's not capped.
No.
It's not capped, so it's actually pretty good.
And you can do it in Overwatch too.
Yeah. And three units of that. What's the point on that?
Well, Immortals is 140 for 10, so for 3 of them, you'd be, at 420?
Yeah. Now, you can only use the strat one time, per round.
Yeah. Well, for free.
For free.
So for 2 CP, if I've got 2 units of Immortals, for 2 CP, I can give it to both of them.
Yeah. Can you use it more than once?
The Overlord's ability is what lets you do that.
Yeah, I know, but does the Overlord say...
it says even if you've used it on another unit.
That's what I'm asking you.
Yep.
So that strat can be used twice.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you got
2 of those bricks,
2 10-man Immortals with dev wounds shooting the same target, you got 20 or 30 mortal wounds.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
You're deleting anything on the board at that point.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good combination, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we're going to see that a lot.
Yeah.
And we're going to see that.
Good luck buying Immortals, too. Yeah.
And we're going to see that get data slate change on not January's, but in the next one.
Yeah.
Kicking out 10 mortal wounds.
I don't see this staying a battle tactic. Having that be free is huge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The play style. So just by me and you talking and a little bit of watching us, obviously having us play and watching some bat reps. The play style for that is get up on objectives and just stay durable.
Yeah, I mean it does carry over from some of that index play. The Wraiths especially, they're very good at being targets that your opponent doesn't want to charge.
Right.
So if you stick them on the objective, they're nice for avoiding that. The Immortals, they're not as durable.
No, but they kick out a lot of shots.
But they kick out a lot of shots. So if you have some help with Xeras or some Scarabs to screen out that melee charge and keep them shooting, they're going to clean up just about anything.
And the ability to add the Scarabs in and enables you to play the mission.
Yeah.
I mean, they actually play the mission really well.
Yeah, and they really do. As long as they're within 6 inches of your Immortals brick with the Plasmancer, they're getting 1 OC as well. Right. So you can have them hang back on the objective while the Immortals go do something else. Yeah,
I think they played a mission very well. I don't think they're a very overly killy army.
No.
But you have, if you do bring that Immortal brick, you do have some killing.
Yeah.
Wraiths do kill.
Yeah, if you've got the 30 of those and the 18 of Wraiths, you're killing most anything on the board.
And the other thing, which is if you base it on what our game was, it's a tough to kill a lot of stuff when the toughness is higher.
Yeah.
So I'm making you -1 to hit in our particular thing. So you can't really So I want to emphasize this when we play and I show some of these codexes off. That card is different than everybody else in the game, not because they win more, even though they went up to about 50%. It's because the toughness is higher, and the ability to make you -1 to hit, ballistic skill, weapon skill, -1 characteristic, is not a thing.
That double whammy is hard, and if I didn't have the rerolls to hit,
exactly,
it probably would have sunk me.
We saw that with Oath of Moments with Space Marines. So that's to get around. That's to get around. It really is. It's to get around to -1 to hit and -1 ballistics or whatever. So, but yeah, it's hard. This game was an interesting game, and I'm not going to ruin the ending. But you can't judge it if you watch this and then go watch our game. You can't judge how good things are.
No,
because the ballistic skill and weapon skill was +1, and the toughness. My Terminator's being toughness 6 over toughness 5, and you were instead of hitting me on 4 or 3s, you were hitting me on 4s. So I mean, it's a good game to kind of judge an idea.
Yeah,
but it's not a good game to judge what they do against the other 20 plus armies in the game.
Yeah,
because I think they're going to wreck. I honestly think they're going to wreck.
It's going to be huge. I think thinking back to a lot of the armies I played during the Index, I saw a lot of NIDs, a lot of Space Marines, a lot of even Tau. Tau is really hard to get across or get around as a Necron player because they're running circles around you, shooting you to hell while you just hope to stay alive. Now, especially if you've got the Hypercrypt or the Canoptic Court, you're moving around too. You're getting around too. Especially with stuff like Tomb Blades at only 75 points. You get the Assault, you get the Fire and Fade. You're doing a lot of stuff.
I do think Necrons are very in this particular codex. Like I said, just flipping through some of the data sheets and stuff. I think they're good. I actually think we are going to see the win rates, at least in tournament play.
Yeah,
we're going to see the win rates go up because I think this codex is pretty balanced. I also think the NIDS and Space Marine Codex wasn't bad either.
Right.
I think this one, like, I would give the NIDS and Space Marines Codex probably somewhere around a B because there's only 3 codexes. We only got 3, right?
Right.
The AdMech, but I haven't looked at the AdMech stuff yet. So, but I'm only looking at these 3 so far: NIDS, Space Marines, and this one's. So if I were to put, I would say I don't, because it's hard to compare because only 3 of them. If NIDS and Space Marines were Bs, I really think this is like a B+. I don't think it's going to be so powerful.
It's not A+ overpowered, but it is powerful, and it is absolutely, in my opinion, an improvement over the Index play.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. There's a couple. There's really one reason why. It's reanimation.
Yeah,
it's reanimation. I think they play somewhat similar to Space Marines as far as both the moments and rerolls and all that stuff. Although your matrix is really good in Canoptic, but I just think it's because of that reanimation, they have the edge.
Yeah,
it's just because of the reanimation.
Yeah,
Space Marines can with the Vanguard attachment can move around, do all that shenanigans as well. But and they can do it just like NIDS can. NIDS can do it as well. It's the reanimation part that's really makes. Puts them above it.
It was very strong during the Index, especially with how the orbs were working every command phase and how the massive aura on the reanimator was healing everything in sight. But I do think the reanimation is personally I think it's actually stronger in the Codex.
Yeah,
just because you're fielding more units, so you're having more reanimations happening, and secondly, you're with the new orb, you're able to do it in any phase. You're not having to wait until the next command phase.
So why don't you tell us about that, Nick? So the old orb is what? In the Index was what?
The old orb, it was on, you could have a Lord, may he rest in peace, he got taken out, or the Overlord. The orb was giving you, during your opponent's command phase. So on my command phase, it was D3 plus whatever bonuses, and then on your command phase, it was D3 plus whatever bonuses.
Right.
But if you wanted to do it at any other time, you had to spend the CP for the Undying Legion strat and hope for the best.
Right.
And there were a lot of cases in the Index where I would do that, and it wouldn't. It would either the timing wouldn't be right, or because you had to wait until the opponent's unit was done shooting or done fighting,
right,
you couldn't just the timing was awful in a lot of cases. But
Right.
now you can do it in any phase. So like if my immortals are getting really chewed up, and I know that they're probably not gonna if they get chewed up in shooting, and I know they're probably not gonna survive in charge or
Right.
combat, I can pop it right then and there and get up to D6 plus D3 if I've got the reanimator
Right.
sitting there.
At the end of the phase.
Right, and that's up to 9 wounds, and
Right.
there's only 10 immortals, so that could be almost the entire unit coming back at once.
Which, and we're not going to spoil anything, which happened.
Yeah, I got 8.
In our-
8 out of a possible 9 come
Yeah,
back, and that was huge.
Yeah, and it's once per game, though. It is once per game.
It is only once per game, which on its face doesn't seem that good, but I think as far as balance-wise, I think that's intentional.
It
Because
has to be once per game, Nick. It
Right.
has to be. That's way too powerful to happen
every round. I mean, that was what made, I think, the Lich Guard brick so unkillable, was
Yeah.
that you would take away 3 wounds or 3 models, and then I would put back 3 models. You take
Yeah.
away 3 models, I put back 3 models every turn, and then nothing happens. And while that's cool when you're winning, if you're not winning, or if you're just trying to have fun,
Right.
it gets boring pretty quickly.
And that still happens. So let's talk about some. So we really actually we touched on a lot of pros.
Mm.
So what are the cons for Necrons? Like what don't you feel very very comfortable with as Necrons? Either they're not durable, or which we know they're durable. I'm just using this for example. Or they don't kill enough, or there are certain armies that you think may still give them a hard time. Things like that. Like what do you think? Cons wise, what do you think that?
Some areas I feel are left wanting a bit is one in damage. The dev wounds from the immortals are really nice. But as far as like super outpouring of wounds and attacks, you're not really getting much else. The scarabs can clean up if you get a lot of lethals. The
Right.
wraiths can do a lot with their pistols and their weapons.
Right.
But I've gotten myself into a lot of situations where I get into a fight and I think I'm going to win it, but their damage just isn't there.
Right.
You're not doing enough to impact the enemy, and I think that's another thing that might be a con as well. As we saw with your Death Guard, there are a lot of abilities out there that affect your enemy's units as well,
Right.
like that makes their stuff worse or stuff like that. And we have a couple of things like that. But not really that much.
Right.
I'm not really affecting your way of playing or making you rethink of how to approach your army.
Right.
It's more of just trying to not die and to kill stuff.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. I could definitely see, and in fairness to what GW has done, they made the game less lethal. And the game is less lethal. I know people argue with that or want to complain about it, but it's less lethal. Going from 3 damage to 2 damage on stuff, and
Right.
3 AP to 2 AP. I mean, and so the damage kick out, you're right. I think that's being, just to kind of push back a little bit, I think that's being seen in everybody so far. Everybody, I mean, when I flipped to the Space Marines card to play Space Marines, dude, I don't know how I'm going to kill anything. We'll just be honest. I don't know how I'm
Right,
gonna kill
and that was sort of my first reaction too, is like, all right, my Lich Guard got nerfed, my Warriors got nerfed,
Right.
I'm not as durable, so now what? What do I do?
Exactly.
And so that was sort of the mission that was given to all us Necron players, was we got to figure out something else now, figure out what our big units are going to be. And I wouldn't even consider it a complete negative, because if, like you said, if everything is less killy, then you have a focus of attention away from, like, I'm not trying to table my opponent anymore. I'm just trying to do the mission and win the game.
Right.
And I think Necrons are better positioned to play missions and to score points than to necessarily clean up the board.
No, I agree. And some of the cons, if you were to call it that, is the damage output.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that in all the codexes. But Necrons are very durable. Well, they're durable. Depending on what you roll. If you only roll ones for your reanimator, it's a different story.
Right.
And if you pick something else, we don't know based on the other. Like, there are 5 detachments in that codex. So one of those may not be good. 2 of those may not be good. You know what I mean? So that could be a down. Like we know in Space Marines, there are a few that aren't ideal. They'll be fun to play when you're playing Garage Hammer, but they're just not ideal to be consistently a winning team.
We've got a couple here. The Annihilation Legion and Obeisance Phalanx, if that's how it's pronounced. Those two, if you have the right amount of the right characters or the right models,
Right.
that can be a lot of fun to play. But that out of the 5 that we were given, I think those 2 are the ones that are least powerful on the scale of things.
So overrated, underrated. So what? So really, it's going to be hard to, because you haven't played everything in the Codex.
Yeah.
So what about what's, as of right now? I can kind of guess what's going to be. What is the most? I think we talked about a little bit. What has to be in the list?
Yeah.
What's the most? I don't want to say under. Yeah. What's the most underrated? So we know that Immortals are good.
Yeah, Immortals are going to be auto-include, I think, no matter what you're playing.
So those aren't going to be underrated. Those aren't. What are the sleeper? What's a sleeper? That's what I want.
Yeah.
What's a sleeper? In your opinion, reading through the codexes, what's a sleeper? What you're like, you know what? For the points and for what I think it's going to do, I think this is going to be a sleeper unit. And this, look out, telling everybody to go buy it right now. I put a lot of pressure on you. You're telling people to go buy my
Go buy. I'm going to say the 2 of my favorite sleepers right now that we saw in the bat rep. One were Scarabs. For how cheap they are, they have a lot more use now, especially with those rerolls.
Right. Searching
for 6s. For only 40 points for 3 of them, you can't do much better really at all. Another sleeper, I think, is the Tomb Blades. In the Index, they didn't really see that much action. They were good for quickly capturing a point, but they they were super weak, and they are still kind of weak.
Right, but they're good for getting points.
But they're good for getting points, and at only 25 points a model, you can now move 12. If you take the Tesla guns, you can move up to 18 inches and still fire.
Right.
And then after you fire, you can move another 6 inches. So if I'm just scooting along the side of the board, I can move 2 feet in one turn.
Right.
With 75 point model. All of a sudden, I'm encroaching on your detachment or deployment zone.
Right.
And that could be big for a lot of the secondary.
They score points. They score points.
Yeah.
It's like you said, 2 feet of movement allows you to get anywhere on the board.
Right.
And if you do, for example, if you play the Hyper Legion, then also you're doing all kinds of stuff. Even if you go, even when you go Canaptic, like what we're talking about now, you get that movement shenanigans, and you can bring 3 of those, which is only 210 points, and you can tie up units. You know what I mean? You can tie up something, or you can go and engage on off fronts or behind enemy lines, or just to secure an objective in no man's land because of the infiltrate thing.
Right, yeah, and
because of the scout movement.
The scout movement, yeah, and I mean, especially if I think they're going to be at least 1 unit of 3. I think is going to be auto include in Canoptic, because you really want that. Like that, if you include the Scout 9, that's over 2.5 feet in your first turn.
Exactly,
it's
which
huge.
Is super good. Yeah, super good. We talked a little bit about combos. We already talked about one combo with the Immortals, which is really the best so far, the best combo in the game.
It's the best in the book, certainly.
In the book, I should say, yeah. So anything else that you really jumped out at you?
Another huge combo that we're going to see a lot, I think, is the fact that you can now attach a Technomancer to the Wraiths.
Right.
That Wraiths, which already have your 4-up invuln, they now get that 5-up feel no pain and a little bit of extra durability. And another thing, it's a pro and a con, because with the Technomancer in there, you gain the infantry keyword. So not only can you target the Wraiths with more abilities and more stratagems now, you're also gaining that target ability as well, right? So your enemies that might have anti-infantry stuff, now that applies to your Wraiths.
Right.
That could be a bit of a con, but I think the pros outweigh it, especially with that feel no pain. Makes it a lot more durable.
Right. Yeah.
And then, plus with the Technomancer, you get to heal D3 on top of your reanimation. So your Wraiths could be healing up to 6 wounds per reanimation or per turn, regardless.
Which is good, because there are 6 wounds each, 5 wounds,
4 wounds apiece.
4 wounds each.
Yeah.
So we were seeing that it was
yeah. I mean, they're not super durable.
It's the fact that there's 4 wounds and 4 ups.
Right.
You know what I mean? And 5 up. 4 or 5 up.
It forces your enemy to point at them with their heavier guns, which gives you more room for your poor, weak Immortals to go all over the place.
Exactly. Characters. We saw Cesaris.
Yep, we saw the Luminor Xeris.
I'm sorry.
Who knows how they pronounce it?
Dude,
right?
I keep calling. So guys, if you watch it, you guys know how I am. I butcher stuff. So Cesaris.
They're all made up, right? Yeah, Luminor Xeris. He packed a punch. I forgot his ability on the Immortals.
But how many points is he?
He actually got dropped points. I want to say off the top of my head, it's 165 for him. Which
I mean, we do have the. Oh, they're not in the codex.
they're not in the codex.
Yeah,
I've got them
don't
on.
Worry about them.
Yeah, they're on my phone.
So
But
what was it?
160, 170-ish points.
So it wasn't bad.
No, it got dropped from the index, which I think is an improvement. They did shrink his beginning aura by a little bit, but if you consider if you're going to be sending him with like a bodyguard, you're already going to be within 3 inches anyways, so it's not that big a deal.
Right. Yeah. What did we talk about?
The new models. Imatech, he was not really picked very often in the index because there wasn't much utility for us to be getting 2 CP during our turn.
Right.
But Canoptic Cork, especially with that 2 CP ability, being able to double target stuff, you're essentially getting that for free. And I mean, he can pack a pretty good punch in melee too, if you get him into there.
Right.
The new Overlord with Translocation Shroud, definitely an auto include, especially if you're packing those Tesla Immortals, because you get your auto advance of 6 inches and you can move through your enemy as well.
Right.
And that again adds on to like the implaceability of your units, where your opponent has to not only think about where you are, but where you could be.
Right, exactly.
And that and the orb is a pretty big deal too. I didn't bring the new Orc and the Diviner. He can be pretty helpful with the warriors, giving them a 4-up invuln on the entire unit. One con I would say is that since he's an epic hero, he can't take any of the enhancements.
Oh, gotcha.
So if you put him in the unit, like you gain that invulnerability, but you lose a lot of capability. Right. And that's sort of why I picked the Chronomancer instead for that unit, for that move, shoot, move, and that -1 to hit. Right. And I think that more or less equals out. Certainly not points wise.
We also saw you also brought some stuff that we didn't see on the table a lot in 8th edition, which those destroyers, what were they? The taller guys?
The Canoptic Doomstalkers.
Yeah, the Doomstalkers. I think they might have came in the Indominus box. I can't remember if they did or not. Maybe it was just a Reanimator. But
it was the Reanimator that came in the Indominus box.
These were things that we really didn't see. Again, and I know you didn't play 9th edition, and I'm not a Necrons player, guys. I can only go by what I'm seeing and what I'm playing against, and what I'm looking at. I didn't see that a lot on the table, but that's not to say they weren't there. In your guys' meta, they might have been there. So that was something interesting. They do pack a little punch with that.
With the rerolls, in the index, you were sort of ignoring them because the Doomsday arc was packing so much more firepower.
What's that point? What's the points on that, Nick?
The Doomstalker, I think it went from 135 down to 125.
So that's a D6.
D6 plus 1 plus blast, 14 strength, re-rolling fully on hits as long as you keep them in your deployment zone.
-3, -2?
-3 AP and 3 damage apiece.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, you can pack a lot.
That was actually pretty good.
Yeah, those re-rolls for him, not that it helped me any, but it can help out a lot.
Right. I mean, yeah. So yeah, it was. Those are a couple of other models I haven't seen on the table in a little bit. Obviously, I've never seen the Forge World model.
Yes, the Tombstalker was a new one for me. It was the first time I put him out. He's the Sentinel. His brother has a bit of a stronger gun, a blast weapon as well.
Right.
A bit stronger against vehicles and whatnot. A bit cheaper in points too. Those didn't really see much play in the index. I did see a couple tournament players that would bring 3 Sentinels into meta tournaments or tournaments where they knew there were going to be a lot of vehicles. Right. But other than that, you didn't see them at all.
Yeah, we didn't. We do have a couple Necron players in our community. Actually, we have a lot of Necron players in our community. But I didn't see a lot of those on the table. Now again, I didn't go to big GTs last year, right? So I don't.
It struggled because I mean, at 115, 130 points at that price point, you were considering taking a Doomstalker instead, which is a bit tougher, or you were considering taking something with more utility like Ophidians or even Wraiths during the index.
Right. So guys, I think we're a little bit longer, but it's okay because we're reviewing the Codex. I think we covered combos. We covered a lot of the material, or as far as not the material, but we covered a lot of units so far. Mm-hmm. Some units that we haven't seen in a long time, at least I haven't. Some units that you feel are going to be pretty solid in the game. And obviously, if you guys have a different opinion, please share it. Don't say Nick's wrong because it's his play style. So
I think most everyone would agree that in the index, Necrons were shoehorned into one play style of just stacking durability on top of everything and not dying. And while that was rewarding, if you did it right and your opponent was unlucky,
Right.
Every game became more or less a coin flip.
Right.
You didn't do any strategy. You didn't plan anything special. You were just marching up the field like like an army of robots.
Yeah,
It
for
was
sure.
thematic, but I think with the Codex now, instead of just having that one style of play, now you've got 5 completely different styles of play, each one with its strengths and its own drawbacks, and that rewards the very varying different levels of collections that people have. If you have a lot of infantry, you could take, the Obeisance or the Awakened Dynasty.
Right.
A lot of destroyers, you're doing Annihilation. A lot of bugs, you're running Canoptic Court.
Right.
It rewards. There's something for everyone now instead of just one play style.
That's what I was gonna. That's actually the point I was gonna make is that you made it perfectly. That Codex and what we've seen in all 3 codexes, not just specifically this one. They are doing a great job of opening up your range of models that you have. So you're not just going to take specific models. You're not going to take specific Lich Guard models now, because other things are very playable in different detachments. And depending on how you want to play it, that's the models you're going to take, and that's the detachments you're going to take, which is awesome. I think that's great for the game.
I think so too. Yeah, and it really gives you a chance to dust off some models, especially if you're coming from 8th, 9th, or even previous editions.
Right.
Like that, that Tombstalker. Even though I didn't start playing till 10th, the Tombstalker's been on my shelf for a year and a half, 2 years.
Right.
Like I had no reason to bring it out until now, and
right.
I think that's going to make a lot of people happy.
So here's a question. This is going to be more of a personal thing. Is you said it was too much rules. 2 rules were too convoluted. Too many of them. Why play 40K? Like, why buy models?
Yeah,
if you weren't going to play the game.
For me, it was a bit of a I guess disjointed introduction into 40K. I really attached to the Necrons, like the theme, the aesthetic of it.
Right.
I thought they looked really cool. Ancient space Terminators, really up my alley. So I looked at it at the time. I was looking at it no differently than one might look at Legos or something, to where I'm just going to build it, I'm going to paint it to where it looks nice, and it's going to sit on my shelf and not do anything.
Right.
And so I got the 9th edition rulebook. I was looking through it, and at the time I was in grad school, so on top of that I had less time to really try to understand everything. And so I sort of threw it by the wayside. I was like, I don't have time to get good at this game. I'm not going to be able to get good. My opponents are going to laugh at me.
Now, real quick, was 10th edition even being talked about at this point, or no?
It was really because, like, during COVID, I knew nobody was really playing games in the first place, so there was that too. But it was I'd heard rumors starting.
Oh, so you started in COVID?
Yeah.
Oh, so you started when 9th edition just dropped. Well, you started collecting models.
Started collecting models, yeah. And that was like a part of my COVID hobbies to keep it from going insane.
So your first box was Indominus.
It was actually the recruit starter box.
Oh, I gotcha. I gotcha.
Then I went for the Indominus and dropped the bucks on it.
Right.
But it really, so halfway through 9th edition, there were rumors from all around that GW was really looking to make things easier to understand, really looking to expand it. So when 10th edition came out, a lot of the marketing around that was that anyone can play it now. Right. And you saw, I started watching more bat reps. I saw that teenagers and kids were starting to get into it and being able to play it. And I thought, well, if a 15-year-old can get into this and figure it out, then so can I. Right. And that really, I think, helps with growing the game and spreading it, and B, making it so that you're not feeling like you're in a place of ignorance when you're approaching the table. Now, of course, I still make mistakes all the time when it comes to remembering stuff, but I at least know more reliably where I can find what I need to look for.
I've been playing for 7 years, dude, and it's still make mistakes. So it doesn't. I mean, it's always going to make. But there's so many rules. There
are so many rules, and I still think for, I would say, the casual bystander, it's still a wall to climb to get to understanding, but it is a lot shorter, and it is a lot easier to find resources and help to get there.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. I wanted to bring Nick on because of his new perspective. Because you're a new player, and like all the guests I have, we've been playing for a long time, and I wanted to get someone in with a new perspective, not just someone who's been playing, and for 8th, 9th, 10th edition. I'm sorry, even before that, all editions before that, because Nick's a good player, he understands the game, and he's good at his Codex. So I wanted the people to see that even though someone's new, you can still have a good understanding of the game, still have a good understanding of play style, and even though you only been in it for 6 months or so, 8 months, whatever. I think when it came out,
it was like June or something, I think.
Yeah, so we 6 months, 7 months. No, that's good, Nick. Glad to have you on, man. I really
happy to be here. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Thanks. Try to make it fun. Favorite model. Let's do this. Favorite model. We're gonna add this on. What's your favorite model in the game? Or it doesn't even have to be for Necrons. What's your favorite model in the game?
That's a tough one. I mean, aesthetically, I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, we'll just go aesthetically.
Yeah, aesthetically, Necrons wise, I think the Void Dragon Satan is awesome.
Right.
I haven't bought one yet, partially because I'm scared of assembling it.
Right.
But just that wonderful foot tall centerpiece with a shining spear is really cool.
Right.
Outside of Necrons, I'm really drawn to Knights. That's going to be my next 40K army. I don't know. I just love robots, man.
Right. Whether they're dead space robots or
live or dead, piloted by humans, I don't care.
Yeah,
just give me some big walkers and I'm good.
So my favorite, everybody knows, is Mortarians. My favorite model that in the game itself. But as far as aesthetically, my favorite model I think is the Triumph of St. Catherine.
Oh, that's a good
one.
Which
is a great model. I have one in my thing. It's still wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to when I build my sisters. I'm doing that as a slow build. Looking forward to get that put together. I want to do it really nice and take my time on it, But St. Catherine, Triumph of St. Catherine. Hey guys, tell me, just because I'm gonna start doing this. I want to know your guys' favorite models, whether it be aesthetically or just on a table that you play. Why don't you put them both in? Again, Mortarian and King Catherine. Yours is the Knights and
the Void Dragon.
The Void Dragon, which is awesome. Again, guys, I appreciate Nick coming on, and I appreciate you guys sticking to the end here. And thanks for watching, and God bless, and peace out.
See ya.